Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we're going to be diving into the fantasy football landscape headed into week 4. Off the gates here, we do have a question from George Play. Should I start Dallas defense or change it for Saints or Detroit defense? So you'll have to forgive me as I look up here. Giants, of course, or the Cowboys, of course, playing against the Giants tonight. Truthfully, I don't love the matchup there. The other options are the Saints against the Falcons and the Lions against the Seahawks. I feel like out of that group, I think I like the Saints most. The Saints have shown themselves to be a very good defense through the first couple weeks. Falcons, I think especially, have been sort of mediocre on the offensive side of the ball. They can be a good team, but this feels like NFC South matchup. It's going to be a grimy, grinded out game, and I think that it's going to be two defenses sort of, playing very well. So I would go with the Saints there. I wouldn't lock yourself into Dallas tonight. I think that they are very susceptible to the run. Not that I expect a massive offensive outing from the Giants, but it is a game that I would probably just want to stay away from. But we're now going to be diving into my favorite starts of the weekend, talking about matchups. And first off, at the quarterback position, my favorite start is Kyler Murray against the Washington Commanders. Everybody is getting swept up in this Commanders mania because of Jaden Daniels, which is very fair. And I do think that he has a very bright future. It's also sort of masking up what was the other main takeaway from that weekend, in that the Commanders have been getting carved up throughout the season up to this point, and this is a very lackluster group. Kyler Murray, obviously, with the dual threat of him, and the fact that I think that this is going to be a situation where now he has a number of weapons around him on the perimeter, that Murray should be able to have a lot of success this past week. You're going up against the Commanders defense after, having a physical, grinded out game against the Lions. I think that the floodgates are going to open up a little bit and that Kyler is due for a big game. And then sort of a sleeper / honorable mention here, I have Joe Burrow against the Panthers. This is a team where everybody's out on the Bengals right now, and 0-3. Their playoff hopes seem to be in shambles, which is fair, but this is a game where you're playing a Panthers defense that is very bad, and I still stand by that. They had a great game last week because of the offense carrying the workload, which almost, I think, makes things better for Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense this upcoming week, considering the fact that the Panthers probably won't just die right out of the gates, and I think the Bengals are actually going to have to play some semblance of offense to be able to compete here. But, I think that Burrow obviously is limited in terms of a fantasy football perspective with the lack of run game, but I do think that he is going to be in for a big game, and as long as the Panthers can keep things competitive, it's going to continue to have Joe Burrow throwing the ball, which is good for fantasy perspective. At running back, my favorite matchup is Breece Hall against the Denver Broncos. The Broncos front seven, I've mentioned this multiple times, has been the biggest surprise to me of the season so far. They are tied for 5th in sacks, and they've done an excellent job of continuing to bring pressure. I think they're going to try and do so this upcoming week as well against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And Breece Hall, I just feel like with the receiving upside that he has, I think Rodgers is going to understand the Broncos are going to try and bring the heat, that he's going to be dumping it down to Breece Hall consistently. And again, especially if you're in a PPR league, I think it's just too much to pass up on how many touches Breece Hall is going to get in this game. But honorable mention here, do have Aaron Jones going up against his former team in the Green Bay Packers. I feel like Kevin O'Connell, there's a certain fire behind that Vikings team right now. I think at least to some degree, the Vikings are going to try and, make Aaron Jones a real feature of this game. I'm expecting at least one sort of well-drawn-up screenplay for him to try and, punch the Packers in the mouth and do a little bit of a revenge game in his own right. So I like Aaron Jones as a, reliable running back 2 play as well, with the potential to go off. Wide receiver, Nico Collins against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars defense is still riddled with injuries, especially in that secondary. They just found out that they additionally lost their number one linebacker in Foyesade Oluokun. And I think that this is a situation where the Texans are going to have to bounce back this week. Still don't know what the playing status is with Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. They were both did not participate in practice yesterday. Haven't seen anything on where they are at today, but a situation that I think the Texans are going to air the ball out. That secondary is extremely susceptible right now, and I think that Nico Collins is due for a big day. Some honorable mentions as well that I'll throw in there. Marvin Harrison Jr. for a lot of the same reasons that I just talked about Kyler Murray as well at the quarterback position, that I think that he's not exactly, a sleeper in this case, that he is trending towards being a consistent top 10 wide receiver play on a week-to-week basis, but especially against the Commanders this upcoming week, they just do not have anybody in that secondary that's going to be able to match up with him. Maybe Emmanuel Forbes, their second-round cornerback that they drafted in the first round last year, is going to play. It sounded like he was trending towards playing on Monday night, but was ultimately ruled out, which makes me think that he's probably pretty close to playing. I still don't think it's going to be enough to stop Marvin Harrison Jr. There is a clear, Kyler Murray, after saying that it's not really his job to get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., that it was this whole, situation last week, I think now, or 2 weeks ago now at this point, now that they know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is capable of doing anything on the football field, essentially, when the ball is in his hands, I think that he is going to continue to be a feature guy. And then I'm going to go with another rookie as well, this one more so on the sleeper side of Rome Odunze against the Los Angeles Rams. It's risky business sort of betting on that Bears offense at this point because it has been so dysfunctional. But some of the greatest Caleb Williams moments in last week's game was throwing to Rome Odunze, who ended up having a big game. If he wasn't already on rosters, he was a big part of, the traction from a waiver wire perspective, and I think that the Bears are going to look to get him more involved. Now, Keenan Allen sounds like he might be playing, which could hurt Rome's value, but I think Odunze is a pretty solid flex option for this week, but definitely monitor the Keenan Allen news as well because that could play a factor there. At tight end, I think that Dallas Goedert is my favorite option here, and it's mainly because of the fact that the Eagles are down basically all of their top pass catchers. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown both expected to be out as of recording here, and this is a situation where the Eagles aren't very deep in the wide receiver room anyways. So I think that Goddard is going to get a lot of opportunities for him this upcoming week. And I just feel like ultimately, the Buccaneers are probably going to sell out, at least to some degree, trying to stop that. But I think that Philadelphia's attack and really the weapon to try and slow down is Saquon Barkley, who would probably also be an excellent play in this. Sort of left him off this list because he is a little bit of a no-brainer anyways. But Saquon's going to be getting a ton of attention. I think that it's going to open up opportunities, especially in play action, for Dallas Goedert in this game, and that he should be one of the top tight end plays. And then a little bit of a sleeper there I would add is Mike Gesicki. Just talked about as well Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense facing off against that bad Carolina Panthers defense. As long as the Panthers can keep things competitive in this game, I do feel like the Bengals are going to try and, really refine that passing game that I thought looked really good last week. But even with that being considered, T. Higgins wasn't exactly, in the groove of the game. I think it was 3 catches in the game. So it's not like he was invisible necessarily. But I think that they still feel like they have a lot of steps to take forward in this game. And ultimately, this is a situation where I'm just betting against the Carolina Panthers. But then defense, special teams. We just talked at the beginning of this of George's question about whether Dallas against the Giants is the matchup to sort of capitalize on. I think really the bad offense that you should be targeting, if it's available to you, because it is a good defensive core here, is the San Francisco 49ers against the New England Patriots. The Patriots are one of the worst offenses in the league right now based off of their receiving core and their offensive line. I think that they are rearing in on a quarterback change to Drake May, where he can maybe make things more dynamic. But this isn't going to be the week against a good 49ers defense. So I think that this is a situation where I'm just taking a good defense against the worst offense in the league, betting against the Patriots, going with the 49ers. But if you have any other fantasy football questions, let us know in the comments section. We are now going to be moving on to a segment where we are going to be talking about whether or not fantasy football owners should be having patience or should be panicking as a result of what has happened through the first 3 weeks with some of the most prominent stars in the NFL. So we're going to be diving into that, but before we do so, we are going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.